Well, it seems like there's a lot of creative things you could do. And yeah, you will get pushback. Yes, Republicans, Tucker Carlson, right-wing news, Newsmax will probably call you Hitler, and will probably say that you were trying to rule by authoritarian decree. That's going to happen no matter what you do. They're already calling you a communist. Joe Biden is the furthest thing from a communist. If the other side is already calling you a postmodern neo-Marxist communist dictator, Hitler, like everything they can, then why not fight? All right, everybody, let's discuss the big vote that took place. Senate Democrats' bill to keep abortion legal nationwide falls to GOP-led filibuster. Senator Joe Manchin joined all Republicans in voting to block the legislation, which Democrats want to highlight in the 2022 midterm elections. The Senate failed to advance a Democratic-led bill Wednesday that would enshrine broad protections for legal abortion nationwide, a vote triggered by the leaked Supreme Court draft opinion that indicates Roe v. Wade is likely to be overturned. The Women's Health Protection Act was just passed the House, won 49 votes, falling short of the 60 senators needed to break the filibuster. All 50 Republicans and Senator Joe Manchin, another Republican, voted to proceed with the debate. The vote was 49 to 51. Moments before the vote, a group of House members appeared at the Senate side of the Capitol and chanted, "My body, my decision," as they walked along the halls outside the chamber. Democratic leaders saw the vote as an opportunity to lay down a marker ahead of the midterm elections in November as their party faces fierce headwinds from President Joe Biden's negative approval ratings to voters' concerns about inflation. Strategists in the party hope to persuade the sizable majority of Americans who want to uphold Roe v. Wade to vote Democratic. Now, going to be pissing off a lot of libs in the next couple of minutes, all right? Because I want to say that this should not be a fundraising issue. This should not be a campaigning issue. This should be a human rights issue, and one that you are willing to fight in every single front. If you have someone like Joe Manchin, who has been chosen to become the boogeyman of the day, because Joe Manchin is always going to hold up things like this, then you have to call the fuck out of Joe Manchin. You need to go onto cameras. I'm talking to you, President. I know you're listening right now. Joe Biden, you need to get in front of a camera and say, obstructionist Joe Manchin is preventing us from codifying something that we are willing to fight for. And that has to apply to anyone who's given the time of day. If you were invited onto CNN, sure, you start to say there are problems within the party, and one of those problems happens to, in this case, being Joe Manchin, and you have to fight nonstop. It cannot be like, well, we tried our best, and now it's time to accept your donations as we get ready for the next election. I'm not going to sit here and say that this isn't a problem of Republicans. It 100% is. Republicans are the ones doing this. Republicans are the ones who sacked the court. Republicans are the ones who are choosing to overturn Roe v. Wade. Republicans are 100% the enemy of bodily autonomy. That is true. And you can see that the majority of Democrats are willing to vote in favor of this. That doesn't mean that they are suddenly given a pass, that they're not allowed to be called out, because they happen to be the ones in power. And I understand there's a filibuster that need a 60-vote majority. There are things that could be discussed, whether or not you have someone like Joe Manchin. Well, I mean, can we bring up Joe Manchin for 1 second before we go on? Back in the day, Manchin faces primary challenge from the left. Paula Jean Swearengin is no stranger to taking on West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin. She confronted the senator during a March town hall in South Charleston, asking Manchin what the state's plan B is for the economy when coal is gone. "We are tired of being collateral damage," Swearengin said, as a small group of supporters behind her cheered and slapped. My point in the original primaries between Joe Manchin and Swearengin is that Joe Manchin obviously had a lot more corporate backing, both in donations. It was outrageous, the differences. I think she was capable of raising like $230,000 to $6 million, which, yes, goes to show you there's a lot more corporate backing behind Joe Manchin, but as well as corporate Democrats backing Joe Manchin. Now, the argument that would be put forth on the other side would be, yeah, but ultimately we just wanted to make sure that we would get someone who would be in place that could beat the Republican in that case. We just felt that Joe Manchin was a stronger candidate because it is obviously a rather red state. Well, at the same time, if Joe Manchin in power is not going to fall in line with anything to do with the party itself, why are corporate Democrats constantly backing more corporate Democrats? What does that show you? The same thing is happening right now between Cisneros and Cuellar. If we have someone like Nancy Pelosi who is like, I am here to tell you that we are here to fight on your behalf. We are here to fight for the rights of women, and we want to fight for bodily autonomy. We are on your side, and that's why I'm going to be backing Cuellar, who is a pro-life candidate, over Cisneros. Well, then I'm sorry, you're losing the moral authority to talk on this. You need to back people who are not pro-life in that case, especially if there are primaries. And someone who is coming in like Cisneros is a fighter. They have shown themselves to have, very good groundswell movements. They are capable of fundraising, all that kind of stuff. I don't understand how you can stand on one end of the aisle and say that we are here to fight for you. You need to donate. You need to vote blue no matter who. And at the same time, we're going to back someone like Cuellar, who is being investigated by the FBI. Can we add that part? Investigated by the FBI at the same time. And again, I need to keep saying this because otherwise people are going to think that I'm in favor of just abstaining altogether. No, all right? I am for harm reduction. I am for strategic voting. If I was an American in this situation, I absolutely would vote for a Democrat over a Republican because it seems like Republicans are wanting to wage an all-out war on trans people, on IA plus people, on women, on bodily autonomy. No question. No question. But at the same time, that doesn't absolve the Democrats of their ineffectiveness. And it's like, it's not unreasonable to call them out for this shit. I can't stand how many people are trying to push back and be like, well, yeah, but like if you look at who voted, it was the Republicans who voted against it for the most part. We just don't have the supermajority. Like we didn't have the supermajority, under Obama? Obama made it a campaign promise. It was one of the things that he said he was going to do when he came into power, and he had a supermajority. And then right away, it was like, well, I just don't think that this is going to become a priority for Democrats at this time. Like a tale as old as time. This keeps going on. You cannot on one end use this as a fundraising / campaign issue and at the same time historically be completely ineffective and or back candidates who are pro-life because the other candidate happens to be a little too left for you. Then where exactly are you standing?
Manchin, no.
Democratic Senator Joe Manchin voted against the Women's Health Protection Act that would have essentially codified abortion rights into law. Now, in this video, I will go over why. I will show you some video of his reasoning or lack thereof. I'll also show you the vote and a discussion that went on between Manchin and Schumer that I'm not really sure what they talked about, but you see they talked after his vote. And also VP Harris's thoughts on all of this as well.
Yeah,
now,
fuck Joe Manchin.
First, I will say, even if they had Manchin's vote, this would not have passed. They need 60 votes. This was more of a symbolic gesture. And even on that, Manchin could not vote with Democrats. So first, let me play you his reasoning, and then I'll get into discussing a little more.
We're going to be voting on a piece of legislation which I will not vote for today. But I would vote for a Roe v. Wade codification if it was today. I was hopeful for that, but I found out yesterday in caucus that wasn't going to be.
Fucking bullshit.
All right. Joe Manchin, just always full of shit. So
always
to be clear,
lying.
this is why he voted against this. Again, just a symbolic vote. It was not consequential, but it's because his state now loves him even more because his support now is coming from Republicans. So this is polling done very recently. Manchin has seen the biggest gains out of anybody in their approval rating. So
wow.
A 16-point increase in his approval rating since or during Joe Biden's presidency. All because of the way he's treating Joe Biden. Basically being, or at least his job currently, to be the guy that obstructs everything.
They basically have
there's
an
always a debate
infiltrator
about whether or not Democrats actually want to do anything here, whether they're just using people like Manchin and Sinema as the villains here. And if it weren't them, it'd be somebody else that wouldn't be voting.
Nice.
Sure. I really don't care. Personally, what the whole going on there. All I want to show you is that Manchin is doing this because he's a Republican in terms of where his support is coming from, and that Biden and Harris and Democratic leadership, if they did care, they would be doing a lot more to fight him, at the very least, to try and eliminate the filibuster, which would then only require 50 votes for something like this to pass. You see right now how Republicans are fighting Madison Cawthorn because he dared to mention their bedroom escapades and use of white powder. That's all Cawthorn did. And that party is trying to destroy him. Yet Manchin blocking Biden's...
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not even asking for anything close to that. It doesn't need to be a Joe Manchin drip feed of, Joe Manchin's weird sexual escapades. It could actually just be, you get the opportunity, you go in front of a camera, and it's like, you talk shit. You call him out. You don't got to give it to him. You don't got to continually placate him, hoping one day Joe Manchin may fall in line and one day Joe Manchin may do what you want, because clearly he doesn't, and he doesn't need to anymore. He seems to be getting broad support from Republicans because he seems to be some, like, infiltrator.
Essentially his entire agenda, Build Back Better, this, voting rights. I mean, go down the list. With him not supporting the elimination of the filibuster, he's essentially blocking Biden's entire agenda. And they are doing nothing to fight him. So whatever the reasoning there is,
he's a
whether
dino.
Biden or Democratic leadership cares or not to pass anything, to me, that doesn't matter. I just want to show you that they are not doing anything. They are allowing this to continue. Now, on the actual bill, Manchin there tries to claim this is not about codifying, Roe v. Wade, but to him, it goes too far. It has too many health protections. That's his issue with this. So first here from ABC News, WHPA is a bill that aims to codify Roe v. Wade, the landmark decision that grants protections for a woman's right to abortion at the federal level. The bill prohibits governmental restrictions on access to abortion services, according to the Congressional Research Service. And I will link to the bill below the video. You can go through it. This is the bill right here. So they mention this is what else the bill does. In addition, governments may not require patients to make medically unnecessary in-person visits before receiving abortion services or disclose their reasons for obtaining such services. Or 2, prohibit abortion services before fetal viability or after fetal viability when a provider determines the pregnancy risks the patient's life or health. The bill also prohibits other governmental measures that are similar to the bill's specified restrictions or that otherwise single out and impede access to abortion services, unless a government demonstrates that the measure significantly advances the safety of abortion services or health of patients and cannot be achieved through less restrictive means. So basically, proper abortion rights, proper healthcare protections. That's why Manchin apparently is against this, because it's actually good. Now, again, doesn't matter. They would need 60 votes regardless, but just symbolically, he's doing this for his Republican base in West Virginia as a Democratic senator. He needs that base if he's going to win the next election. And even then, he'll still probably lose. I mean, why would you pick a Republican light when you can get the real thing? But we will see. Maybe they like how Manchin's pissing off the Democratic base. So on what happened here. So this is the vote, Manchin's vote. You're going to hear it. And then I'm going to cut to the discussion that apparently happened between Manchin and Schumer.
Mr. Manchin. Mr. Manchin.
Mr. Manchin.
No.
I kind of feel like the initial approach there, because I am a body language expert after all, was kind of like, I'm sorry, or like, yeah, tough. I don't know. How would Joe Manchin talk? Tough coal or something like that? The coal is black, you know what I mean?
On this vote, the yeas are 49, the nays are 51. 3/5 of the senators duly chosen and sworn not having voted in the affirmative. The motion is not agreed to.
All right, so you saw there that discussion that took place between Manchin and leader Schumer in the Senate. Who knows? I mean, Manchin was already up front about how he wasn't going to vote. That's the video I showed you earlier. I'm not sure what there would have been to discuss there on the floor. But regardless, they had some kind of discussion. And then you saw Kamala Harris react to the vote there.
Okay, I'm going to go back to this in a second. I wanted to get to Kamala Harris's comments afterwards.
So check this out.
I just presided over the Women's Health Protective Act vote, and sadly, the Senate failed to stand in defense of a woman's right to make decisions about her own body. And let's be clear, the majority of the American people believe in defending a woman's right, her choice, to decide what happens to her own body. And this vote clearly suggests that the Senate is not where the majority of Americans are on this issue. It also makes clear that a priority for all who care about this issue, a priority should be to elect pro-choice leaders at the local...
This is what fucking infuriates me. Because, like, immediately twisting the whole thing into a campaign issue, where it's just like, and that's why you got to get out and you got to donate, you got to vote blue no matter who, you got to make sure that we get more and more Democrats elected into every position of power, and so that we can finally have control and do something about this.
The state and the federal level. Because what we are seeing around this country are extremist Republican leaders who are seeking to criminalize and punish women for making decisions about their own body.
Why not have compromised with Murkowski and Collins, Madam Vice President?
All right, so I want to address quickly the press there at the end asking, again, these people are so in a bubble. It is amazing. Asking Harris there, why not partner with Susan Collins and Murkowski on their bill, their version? This is why. It wouldn't pass anyways. And it would also then give them cover in their states. So they would still need 60 votes for whatever the hell Collins and Murkowski are cooking up. And so if they agree to support that, then what? You have 52 votes. Okay. What now? Now you've given cover to 2 Republican senators in their states where they can still say, I support this. I support Roe v. Wade. I had this vote. and still be able to, you know, shave off several Democratic suburban voters in their state to be able to keep their seats. So it would be completely stupid for them to work with Collins and Murkowski on their bill when it's not going to pass anyways, and all it would do is help them. Now, on her advice here, got to vote in more pro-choice Democrats. You have to look. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's just like it's gonna like swallow the medicine, you know. It's like at a time like this, then why are we not campaigning for Cisneros over Cuellar? Why is that an issue? Again, I'm not the person who's going to be sitting back and saying like, oh, you know, you should just abolish, just, you know, walk away from politics altogether. Politics is it's a fool's game, because when you do that, you see the ground to the worst people, and in this case, Republicans are obviously worse than Democrats ultimately. But like Democrats who are unwilling to fight, like again, where was the speech when you were talking about that? Why didn't you call out Joe Manchin as well? Why didn't you, like, why is everyone so afraid of doing that? Why is everyone so afraid in the Democratic Party of calling out Kyrsten Sinema? Why does Joe Biden come out in front of the White House and thank Kyrsten Sinema sometimes, you know, in those press conferences? Like, it just infuriates me. It doesn't make any sense from a, like, well, this is technically the only obstructionist in the party, right? Now, there are some articles on experts say Biden could use executive powers to protect abortion access. The White House vowed last October to pass laws that maintain abortion protections, but so far the administration has made little progress. With legislation shoring up abortion access unlikely to pass Congress and the Supreme Court poised to scale back protections, the Biden administration appears unlikely to fulfill its promise to expand and protect abortion access unless, as some advocates are calling him to do so, he uses executive power. Abortion rights, while hardly a signature issue for President Joe Biden, were a majority component of the National Strategy of Gender Equity and Equality, a list of policy goals and commitments released in early October by the administration. In that document, the White House vowed to protect the constitutional right to a safe and legal abortion and established in Roe v. Wade. That commitment included supporting the repeal of the Hyde Amendment, which bars the use of federal funds to pay for abortion. In practice, the Hyde Amendment prevents most states' programs from Medicaid. The federal state health insurance plan covers low-income people from covering abortion, which can cost hundreds of dollars out of pocket. Theoretically, the administration has taken steps into the direction of maintaining abortion access. It submitted a budget to Congress last May that would repeal the Hyde Amendment, though in Washington, the president's budget is treated more like a signal of priorities than a serious policy proposal. It also endorsed Women's Health Protection Act, a bill that would have codified Roe v. Wade protections. But the impact has been minimal. While both proposals have passed the U.S. House of Representatives, they have little chance of success in the Senate. Passing legislation such as the Women's Health Protection Act requires 60 votes. Meanwhile, 50 Democrats would need to unite to repeal the Hyde Amendment. Neither of these appear likely to happen, and now you know they didn't. The Senate is evenly split between the parties, but the Democrats control the chamber because Vice President Kamala Harris has the tie-breaking vote. Two Democratic senators, Joe Manchin of West Virginia, Bob Casey of Pennsylvania, are generally unfriendly towards legislation that expands abortion access and declined to sign on in support of Women's Health Protection Act. Democrats' margin has now become even slimmer, with Senator Ray Lujan of New Mexico temporarily incapacitated after a stroke. Meanwhile, Biden has said little publicly, this is an old article by the way, little publicly about the White House's stance on abortion rights. The White House did not respond to multiple requests for updates on how it hopes to move forward with their effort, but the looming midterm elections mean the window to pass either bill to law may be growing narrower. Democrats are considered a great risk of losing their slim governing majorities in both the House and the Senate this November, though some believe a ruling by the Supreme Court restricts abortion access could mobilize their voters. Some experts suggest that given the limited possibilities in Congress, the administration could use or should use executive power. Legislative fixes are non-starters, and every second that's spent trying to work on legislation is a second that's not being spent trying to affect access on the ground, says David Cohen, a professor at Drexel's University Klein School of Law, who focuses on constitutional law and gender. I don't think anyone thinks legislation is going to happen, and if they do, they're living in a fantasy world. But there are a few avenues the White House could take, suggests Mary Ziegler, a law professor at Florida State University who studies abortion. In particular, she said the Biden administration could rely on the Food and Drug Administration to issue regulations that expand access to medication, abortion, a 2-pill regimen that people can use safely, and end pregnancy at home for up until 10 weeks. The most significant thing the Biden administration has done is through the FDA, and the most significant things the Biden administration will be able to do going forward are through the FDA, she said. Already, the administration has moved in that direction. This past December, the agency loosened restrictions on how one of the medication abortion pills, a drug known as mifepristone, there you go. Who names prescription drugs, by the way? Like, why are they never like the drug that makes you feel happy? It's like it's Prozac. Why is it always like Lextricrol, Mlextapline, Spleenply? Why do they always sound like that? is dispensed. Previously, the agency held that mifepristone must be administered in person, even though medical groups have long said that the pill can be taken safely at home. The FDA's move, initially prompted by the COVID-19 pandemic and made permanent in December, allowed for medication abortion pills to be prescribed virtually and sent to patients through the mail, eliminating numerous barriers for patients who do not have the time or resources to travel to a licensed clinic or healthcare facility. But without some more White House action, the impact will probably be limited. So far, 19 states have passed laws in place that require physicians to dispense mifepristone in person, essentially rejecting the FDA guidance. More state legislators are preparing similar legislation. The administration could attempt to overrule those state laws, Ziegler and others said, challenging them in court and arguing that the FDA regulations as representational federal law preempt state ones. There is no precedent of using the FDA guidance to overrule state limitations on medication abortion, but it's an argument that at least has a chance of succeeding in courts, legal experts say. There is some support for the idea that states cannot ban FDA-approved medication. This is now a novel legal argument. Maybe it would mean states cannot ban the sale of medication abortion, which means states must allow abortion for up to 10 weeks. There's a new angle. It may be challenged, it may be pushed up against, it may be fought, but it's something. It's something that shows that you care about this and you're willing to fight, and that's what Republicans are doing. Republicans are willing to fight in the other direction. Republicans are willing to fight despite sometimes not even governing by the majority. Republicans are willing to do things like stacking courts even though they have a month before an election. Those are like gerrymandering so that they can win elections more easily. These are all the things Republicans are willing to do. So why not fight? Why not fight in the opposite direction? This may be a novel approach, but it's something that you could do. And even if it's pushed up against and fought, you could say that you're fighting what you consider to be the good fight in the other direction. That could take on a new relevance if the Supreme Court does use its major abortion case, Dobbs versus Jackson, Women's Health Organization, to overturn a severely weakened Roe v. Wade, an outcome legal observers say is highly likely. Such a ruling would eliminate the federal abortion rights guarantee and could allow states to ban abortion entirely. A decision in the case is expected this summer. If such an argument withstood legal challenges, it could render toothless any state law that attempted to ban abortion prior to 10 weeks of pregnancy. That would be a very good way of trying to combat this in the opposite direction. If the Supreme Court does overrule Roe, there is more urgency for the Biden administration to pursue arguments like this. There are other strategies the administration could explore, experts said. The Department of Health and Human Services could encourage states to use their own Medicaid funds, which are not governed by the Hyde Amendment, to cover abortion services, though it's not clear how much impact that would have. Cohen also suggested looking at whether the government could lease federal land to abortion clinics. In theory, those clinics could operate within the borders of the state that has limited or even banned abortions, since they would not be on state property. Those clinics could exempt from the state's abortion laws and instead governed by federal statute. Now, I know some people might hear these things and they're thinking, well, this just sounds kind of silly or radical. You have to start thinking outside the box in this respect. Like, we're talking about limiting the bodily autonomy of half the country. So yeah, it has to be more than a purely ceremonial vote, which you knew was going to fail. And even though you knew it was going to fail, Senator Joe Manchin still didn't vote for it. And then turning that around and saying, well, the only solution to this is that you donate and you vote in the upcoming midterms. That's the only thing that we can do. Well, it seems like there's a lot of creative things you could do. And yeah, you will get pushback. Yes, Republicans, Tucker Carlson, right-wing news, Newsmax will probably call you Hitler and will probably say that you were trying to rule by authoritarian decree. That's going to happen no matter what you do. They're already calling you a communist. Joe Biden is the furthest thing from a communist. If the other side is already calling you a postmodern neo-Marxist communist dictator, Hitler, like everything they can, then why not fight? With abortion rights under attack, Nancy Pelosi is siding with anti-abortion Democrats. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is still inexplicably standing with Cisneros-Cuellar, the House's most anti-abortion Democrat, even after the recent evidence that the Supreme Court might overturn Roe v. Wade, which could leave it up to Congress to protect the right to abortion nationwide. Cuellar faces a primary challenge from Jessica Cisneros, a 28-year-old left-wing Democrat and human rights lawyer who has been endorsed by Bernie Sanders, Justice Democrats, and AOC. The March 1st primary was so close, he came out ahead by 1.5 points, by the way. Everyone should remember that. 1.5 points. It would almost seem like time and time again, corporate Democrats are just as afraid of actual progressives coming to power as they are of like losing power ultimately to what? To the midterms based on a ceremonial vote because people didn't come out. This is your fault. You didn't vote blue no matter who. This is ultimately on the backs of everyone who didn't vote for Hillary Clinton. This is Susan Sarandon's fault. This is Bernie Sanders' fault. This is AOC's fault. This is the progressives' fault. Pelosi is not alone in this madness. No matter how much of a liability Cuellar becomes, establishment Democrats seem determined to stick with him. House Majority Whip Jim Clyburn, too, traveled to the South Texas 28th Congressional District to appear at a rally for Cuellar the day after the news about the Supreme Court leaked to Politico, and dismissed the idea that Democrats should not support an abortion opponent right now as pretty sophomoric. House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, too, has been sticking by Cuellar. The American Prospect reports at least 3 Democratic Congressional Committee approved for consulting firms are working to help Cuellar against Cisneros. Again, if he only came out a point and a half ahead of her, then that means that like she has a fighting chance, like more than a fighting chance. And I'm not saying that if this victory occurs, that it's just basically going to solve this entire problem. There are creative solutions to this problem, though, as we're pointing out here. There are things that can be done. It cannot simply be that Democrats rest on this until November. They just sit back and say, well, yep, this is what will happen if you don't vote for us, and if you do vote for us, this won't happen. We'll keep it at bay. We won't actually push back against it. We won't codify bodily autonomy rights, but we will keep it at bay because we're not Republicans and we're not actively attacking it. So that's better. It is. It is slightly better, you know? He only became above Cisneros because there was a second progressive candidate that acted as a spoiler. Oh, well, fuck. Spoilers, be gone.
Do you enjoy the Serfs but prefer not to have to use your eyeballs? Many are saying this. Well, we've got the solution for you. It's the Serf Times in podcast form, available on most major podcasting networks now. If you enjoy it, please consider leaving a good review and feedback because it really helps the show out, apparently, and it's free, just like the podcast.
To our gods, Xander Corvus and Peyton L. Just, we are prepared to embark on a mighty jihad in your name. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, we are but your humble jester, attempting in vain to get you to laugh. To our valiant knights of the Round Table, Benji Arnie, Tech Tink, Scary Earth Human, Tony, DM Rivera, Resident Scarecrow, Sir Nickus, Mayred, Cheryl Alvarez, Ruby Kelly, Brandon, Words Greenwood. It doesn't matter what I believe, it only matters what I can prove. Egbert Celine, Matthew Scarborough, Stellar Vision, Ariane McCarthy, Daniel Sutton, Coulter Smith, Jenna Tao, Quiet 185, Anna Loves Riley, Omni, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, The Tim Caucus, Multimondi, Trevbot, EXE, Brian Ephraim, Lemmy 101, Anthropophojack, Saren 42, Catherine, Ramon Acosta, Incosin, Agent NDN, Violent Orchard, Political Puppy, La Media Panza, Zach Christensen, Todd Buckingham, and Todd Lajeunesse. We raise our mugs and salute our brave heroes off to another glorious conquest.